Hi everyone, and welcome to this edition of Writers Infusion. I'm your host, Susan. I'm here with the team, Ed, Jen, Julie, and Dave. And we are here to read a story. It's a memoir excerpt from Barbara Carter, who lives in Nova Scotia. So thank you, Barbara, for submitting. It's called Floating in Salt Water, and I will read a quick summary for you that she wrote. A sensitive, observant, feisty little girl growing up in a kooky Canadian boarding house in the 1960s is told she has everything a child should ever want, but feels something is missing. She must sort through her family's strangeness to find happiness and figure out if the thoughts inside her head are trustworthy. And I'm going to pass it over to Julie.
Part 1. 1963 to 1966, ages 5 to 8. Our house. Mother liked us to take our shoes and boots off in the small room by the back door we called the porch. She liked her floors kept clean. In the winter time, our German Shepherd Lassie slept in the porch. The rest of the year, the dog stayed chained outside, sleeping in the doghouse Father had built. He'd painted it white with yellow trim to match our house, yellow being my mother's favorite color, the color in our kitchen. Mother put one of her worn, tattered, hooked mats inside for the dog to sleep on. She liked to hook mats. They were in every room. We didn't have running water. Marjorie and Mother carried buckets of water from the well. They washed the dishes in the pantry. In our dining room sat a large oval wooden table with a sturdy center post and a dozen mismatched chairs, which Father called antiques, which meant they were really old, older than my parents. Mother kept the table covered with a colorful flowered vinyl cloth hanging almost to the floor, making a special place underneath, like a cave or a tent, where I liked to hide and listen to the adults when they didn't know I was there. In the corner of our dining room, by the door to our cellar, sat a large piece of dark furniture Mother called a buffet. Mother didn't allow us to touch the good silver or the lace tablecloths or the bills and other important papers she kept in the drawers. A metal cot along the opposite wall was where we sat to watch television. We were lucky. Mother said not everyone in our neighborhood owned a TV, and that when I was a baby, Father was the first one on our road to buy one. She spoke of how the neighbors gathered at our house on weekends. Mother kept the good room, where we were to do nothing but sit, neat and tidy, for when company came, but visitors seldom dropped by. The front entrance was a strange shape. One of the boarders said it was like a half of a hexagon. I didn't know what that meant. Mother called the room a dingle hole. I asked why it had such a funny name. I don't know, that's what the man who owned the house before us called it. She continued to call it by the same name, even though she was unable to tell me what the word meant. Mother didn't care about those kinds of things, but I did. I liked the room. I played there in spring and summer, when the afternoon sun came through the windows, filling the room with warmth and light. Mother kept geraniums on end tables by the windows. I didn't like their smell. In the winter, she kept the door closed because she said it was too drafty and wasted heat. Mother moved all her plants to the good room and used the dingle hole like a refrigerator for our leftovers. Mother liked the room best in wintertime. I didn't. Mother and I disagreed on a lot of things. We never used the front door. Mother said no person in their right mind comes to the front of a house. If anyone did, she rushed to the window in the dining room, overlooking the front door, pulled back the curtains, and knocked rapidly on the window pane. Mother banged loud enough I feared the glass might break. Then she waved her hand, motioning them to the back of the house. Once she saw they understood, she let the curtain fall and went to the back door to greet whoever it was with a smile, not letting on how upset she'd been with them for coming to the wrong door in the first place. Usually, the only people who showed up unannounced were salesmen, carrying suitcases filled with clothing or other items. Mother didn't go out to shop often, other than buying groceries. Mother and Marjorie would stop what they were doing, sit and sort through the clothing, looking for a good deal. Mother sometimes bought a new dress for herself once in a while, one for Marjorie too. The only time Marjorie got dressed up was on Sundays when we went to church and grandmother's house. Marjorie would sit in front of her dresser, staring into the mirror, brushing her long, dark brown hair at least 100 times. Mother complained Marjorie spent too much time getting ready. Mother stood at the bottom of the stairs, yelled, "Get down here, now, or we'll leave without you." Mother dressed quickly, tugging and wiggling into her girdle. It didn't take her long to choose which dress to wear, or to brush her dark curly hair, which she kept permed because she said it was easier to care for. She pinned her hat on her head and puckered her lips as she applied red lipstick. Father dressed in a baggy brown suit and waited in the car. He was so thin, Mother complained his clothes never fit him right. He smoked cigarettes until he became impatient and honked the horn. Mother would then run once more to the bottom of the stairs and yell, "Hurry up!" Marjorie raced down the stairs and out to the car, her Sunday hat in hand. She jumped in the back seat behind Father, pulled a compact from her purse and dabbed her face with powder, applied lipstick, and pinned her hat on her head while Father drove. Sundays were the only day of the week Mother and Marjorie wore lipstick and high heels. Every Sunday morning they practiced walking in their shoes so they didn't trip in public. Father said, "Those GD shoes do nothing but ruin the floors." Behind them, they'd leave a trail of small rounded dents in the linoleum, like bird tracks in snow. "No need of you two wearing such trash," Father said. "You look like a pair of fools." I studied how they walked, wishing I could wear high heels too. All the women in the Simpson, Sears, and Eaton's catalogs wore heels. I wondered if anyone yelled at them for ruining floors. Early confusion. When the Avon lady first came to our house, her hair was brown, then black, later red, and finally blonde. I couldn't understand how this happened and asked my mother to explain. That's when she told me about dye. I immediately wanted this magic solution, asked my mother to buy me some. She turned and gave me a hard stare, her lips pressed tight. I tensed. "Only bad women," she spat, "dye their hair." I was confused as to why my mother sat chatting with a bad woman, why she smiled and laughed like everything was okay. I was even more confused after the Avon lady left and Mother's smile disappeared, her voice loud and mean. A woman's place is in her home with her family, taking care of her children, not traipsing all over the neighborhood. But when the Avon lady needed someone to care for her little girl while she worked, Mother smiled and seemed excited to welcome the child into our home. The 3-year-old was tiny, with the lightest blonde hair I'd ever seen. She napped on the cot in our kitchen, sucking her thumb, while her other hand slipped inside her panties. When Mother saw this, she rushed across the room screeching, "Dirty girl! Dirty! Dirty! Dirty girl!" Mother grabbed her hand, yanked it out, and slapped it hard. "You're going to grow up to be just like your mother." And I wondered if I'd someday be like my mother, too. Wellington Dimone was a fat man in his 60s that paid money to live with us. He sat on a chair in our kitchen, watching my mother bake and prepare meals. Often Mother grumbled under her breath, "Too much time on his hands. Must be nice to sit around all day with nothing to do." "Go on, go, sit in his lap," Mother would motion to my younger sister and me. "He'll buy you something when the Avon lady comes." Charlene and I did as we were told, but I didn't think it fair that Marjorie got to pick something out of the Avon lady's wonderful book of pictures, even though she hadn't sat on his lap. I didn't like his stubbly face, or the way his hand touched my bare legs, or his hot breath. I especially didn't like his belly jiggling against me when he laughed. But my mother didn't want to know why I didn't like him. She turned her back and said, "You're foolish to complain about someone who's being nice." So I sat on his lap to get the trinkets I wanted. Dimone dropped bits of balled-up paper on the floor when he saw Marjorie approach. "Look at this mess." She bent over to pick it up. Dimone reached forward and rubbed the back of her leg. She straightened, spun, and faced him. "Not in front of everyone." Then in a loud voice said, "Stop touching me." "What are you talking about?" He chuckled. I didn't do anything." "I'm sick of your stuff." Marjorie marched into the pantry, dipped a pot of water from the bucket we kept on the counter, and stomped back to the kitchen where Dimone sat. She threw the water over him. "Frig!" He jerked back in the chair. "Marjorie, what the hell?" Water ran down his face and shirt and onto the floor. "Hope that cools you off, you fat petard." Charlene creeped, and I ran back and forth in front of him, laughing as he wiped water from his face. Mother stood at the other end of the kitchen with her arms folded. She ordered Marjorie to clean up the mess. My feet slipped on the wet linoleum. The back of my head slammed against the solid oak door. I cowered on the floor, screaming. Mother rushed to scoop me out. Barbara Ann, stop screaming!" But I didn't stop. Mother turned and yelled at Marjorie, "This is because of your foolishness." She paced the floor with me in her arms, rubbing the back of my head. It's all right, stop crying." Marjorie stayed off to the side, silent. Mother picked up the phone and dialed the doctor. A song went through my head, and the doctor said, "No more monkeys jumping." Then she called my father. One fell off and hit his head. My father rushed home, and off to the hospital we went. My mother sat in the front seat, holding me on her lap, cursing Marjorie, while my father cursed his lost time from work. The rest became a blur of white sheets, strange smells, cold machines, nurses and doctors' hands, and the word concussion. I had no idea what it all meant, but it seemed important. At home, Mother sent Dimone packing. Marjorie tiptoed around Mother for weeks to make up for her terrible deed. The Avon lady stopped coming, and from then on, whenever I didn't do as my mother wanted me to do, she blamed it on that bump on my head.
I would have used that excuse forever.
I'll say. It's my head. About.
So, first off, I liked the first sentence. I don't know why, but it just kind of brought me right into the story. But after that, I mean, overall, I like hearing about your life when you were younger. I just felt like for the first few pages there was a lot of telling for me, and if I were to redo it a little bit, I think I would make it a scene on a typical day and have you walk in and kind of describe everything as you're going through it. Yeah. So instead of just describing everything, then you're coming in, and I wrote this down, so maybe you come in and you touch the silver and your mother yells at you, and you kind of get a feel for what everyone's like through your actions as opposed to just
actions.
Right. So that's how I wanted to start off.
Yeah, I agree. There were a lot of areas that I marked here where I said, this could be a scene rather than telling us. I mean, carrying buckets of water from the well, that's something going on. The hiding underneath the table and so forth. These are all scenes, and it would show us the people and the action, rather than, I mean, people don't read a memoir to learn about rooms and furniture. They read it to learn about somebody else's life, and the more actual life, you can bring into the story, the better.
And I found myself wanting to know more. I really did.
Yes.
Because it is an interesting house and background, and there's a lot going on with the mother. But I did want to see more of the day-to-day to see how it affected you.
And I know Marjorie and Mother, how they dress, how they primp themselves, get ready, but I don't know anything about Barbara Ann, what she wears, how she puts herself together, what her hair is like. Dad seemed two-dimensional. I'm sure he isn't, but the father is just cardboard, whereas Wellington Dimone is more fleshed out than he. And I don't know much about Charlene either, and perhaps you'll get into that later, but I agree, less about furniture and rooms and more about the actual people. I love memoirs, but it seems staccato. It seems just start and stop. They're just little pieces that are put together briefly. There's a lovely book I know about writing a memoir called Old Friend from Far Away, The Practice of Writing Memoir by Natalie Goldberg. I'm sure there are other resources, but if you want to look at those, they can help you.
I'll post that too. I wanted to know why they didn't have a lot of visitors.
Oh, they did when they had TV, and then it stopped.
That was confusing,
Yes.
because at one point she says everyone came over every weekend because we had TV, and then the next paragraph was...
Actually, it doesn't say why.
Right. It doesn't say why. Right. I want to know why.
It says they gathered at our house on weekends, but it doesn't say why.
Right.
I mean, we can infer that it was because of
The TV.
Sure.
But we don't know. I had a lot of questions. I mean, right from the start, I want to know, where are we?
Yes.
Where in this universe does this take place? I mean, in the summary, it's Canadian, okay, but
you can't
it's still a big country.
Yes.
And
you can't assume someone's going to read a summary when they start your story, right?
Right. And even things like, okay, we didn't have running water. Marjorie and Mother. Who's Marjorie?
Right.
I wondered that.
Yes.
I can say, it doesn't take much. Say, my sister Marjorie and Mother.
Or our border, Marjorie.
Yeah, we didn't even know. And I don't know, some consistency things. Like on page 2, she says, I liked the room. Well, she just described 2 rooms. I'm not sure which one she liked. Did she like the dingle hole or the
kitchen?
formal one?
Yeah.
So
Do you know?
I found myself feeling like there were a lot of questions that I had that were unanswered by the text.
I wanted to delete the dingle hole allusion, a whole chunk of page 2. The front edge was strange shape. Second sentence, I didn't know what that meant, all the way to Mother didn't care about those kinds of things, but I did.
But again, if you brought it into a scene, then you could work it in. At
Yes,
least pieces of it, right?
Yes.
Dave looks like you must have.
Yes.
Well, I'm letting you just
No, I'm
deflate.
I'm
Is that what we're doing? We deflating?
Yeah,
We're waiting for you to
when I
deflate so we
hear-
can inflate.
Go ahead.
No, you go first.
Fire away.
No, you go first.
When I hear boarding house, my interest is piqued totally. and it has nothing to do with rooms. It has to do with the people who have traveled through the rooms. And then I thought back of the opening scenes in To Kill a Mockingbird, where she is very older, no, much older, looking back on the scene. So we got an overview of the town from an older person's perspective. And she could do kind of a brief summary of some of the things that really knocked her out about this rooming house. Because it's a gold mine of information. Rooming, and it's got nothing, again, it's got nothing to do with the type of wainscoting on the wall. It's got to do with people who travel through. The first hint we get is the fat, creepy guy, but not enough. He wasn't terribly creepy.
And no other borders, no
Yeah,
other interaction.
Yeah,
I
well,
thought it was creepy,
He
but
was
I
very
thought that-
Yeah. Oh, I
well, I don't know if he's perverted. He was fat and blubbery, but
He's taking advantage of
he
us.
didn't. According to what I read, he didn't do anything perverse.
I think off
He-
camera he did. I think Marjorie.
Well, yeah, you're thinking the worst of them.
Yes.
I want the information that will definitely pin him down as a creep. And if his hands traveled, if he was untoward toward the little girl, that can certainly come out. But it didn't come out. It came out that he was lonely. He probably missed having grandchildren and would lure them in with gifts from Avon. That's not horrible.
Well, there was something
How I
going on.
perceived it.
Oh, he wanted kids on his lap. Yeah, he seemed
yeah.
salacious. He did. And his name,
But he didn't
his
do
name,
anything.
Demon.
Yeah, but he
You
didn't
know,
do anything though.
But I find the contrast funny, because like the first section is all about furniture.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get into all this, I found it disturbing, with this guy. And I wrote down, this is kind of like Dr. Zeus meets Tennessee Williams.
Oh, I like that.
What, and so I don't know where this story's going to go. I really don't. I mean, the beginning is like, blah.
I
And then you
didn't-
start getting into,
Yeah.
here's one of the borders, and here,
I didn't even know it was a boarding house.
Right, that's true. You
I
can't
had
tell
to
from
read
there.
it.
There was
Several
one
times.
mention of a
Right.
border.
Right.
Right.
And
I
he
need to
was-
know up front that there's a boarding house, and boy, that's just, again, a gold mine of
Yeah.
weird, odd characters. And the job that this lady has, and I think she can do it because she clearly has the experience and the knowledge, and I think the writing skill to do it,
Yeah.
is to
Yeah.
pull out the oddities, not the ordinary, but the oddities of these people, because that's what's going to keep interest going. And very few times in writing, it's a memoir, so you can have people passing through with no summary. They have no other purpose other than their oddities, and click, okay, they're done, the next, bring on the next weird one.
It's true. It's different from a novel
Yes.
where any
Yes.
character that you introduce has to have some kind of
A reason.
come on,
Yeah, yeah.
some resolution to it. But that's not
Right.
true
But,
in a memoir.
and just as she's done with the fat guy, he's gone.
Right.
I know, that was
Then,
way too
go on.
quick.
Yes, but yeah, she didn't yell at him though. She yelled at Marjorie. I didn't like that she yelled at.
So, but I don't know who Marjorie is. Is Marjorie another
I think she's
border?
a sister.
She's a
Or
sister.
Marjorie a
I think she's
sister?
but it wasn't
Yeah.
clear.
So
Yeah.
here's, so
No.
the first 4 pages up into early confusion, I think can just be cut. And I'm sorry, I know, and I know like you can fall in love with your words, and it's not that it's not beautifully written, it is, but nothing happened, and there's nothing exciting that happens. It tells me nothing about the characters, there's nothing interesting there. But then I got to page 4, okay, and then you had, so you like the original first line? I think when the Avon lady first came
Yes.
to our house, her hair was brown, then black, later red, and finally blonde. I think that's a fantastic first
That's
line.
great too.
What I love is the mother. It's not so much the boarders, it's the mother's interaction with the boarders. So the mother thinks the Avon lady is dirt. And then when her little girl puts their hand down the pants, dirty, dirty, dirty. But when her children can get Avon from the dirty old man,
Yes.
go sit on this lap.
Interesting.
It's okay. And he's rubbing, if Marjorie is her daughter,
Yes.
he's rubbing her daughter's leg. And the
Yes.
mother is saying, go sit on this lap
Creep.
so you can get what you want. But at the same time, the Avon lady should be home.
Maybe
at her
I missed
house,
the rubbing leg.
taking-
part.
And I think this mother, I hate her and I love her. And I would read a whole book
Oh,
about
yeah,
her.
yeah, yeah.
And I don't
Right.
care that she likes the color yellow, and I don't care that
Oh, I don't either.
there's a dingle room or whatever the heck it is. I don't care about Lassie's house. I care about how this mother, and how this mother is either using her children to benefit from the boarders, how she's a hypocrite.
But what makes her
Yeah,
get
that's
rid of the
interesting.
guy?
Loves that.
What makes her kick him out?
I think he went one step too far. She
But
was
Because her
what-
daughter
to
ended
certain
up getting
points.
physically hurt because of what
But how
happened
did-
with
how
him and
did she
Marjorie.
get- Well, that's what I mean.
Because he
What-
put his hand on Marjorie's
water
leg,
was-
Marjorie got mad,
Right.
the water
Into the water.
happened,
The floor
and
was
then
slipping
she
from water.
fell.
She slipped and clumped her
Oh,
head.
okay.
So when her child finally gets physically injured, never mind emotionally injured,
Yeah,
the fact that
emotionally,
she's gonna be
definitely.
molested,
Uh-huh.
that's fine. But if she ends up at the hospital, then I draw the line.
Yeah.
Like,
But
that's
she-
an interesting character. She's horrible,
Mm.
but she's interesting.
But I think she
You know?
does that because she knows what's going on with him, and then
She
the
knows.
physical piece is kind of a click in her head that, you know what, this isn't good, and it's kind of a wake-up call for her. That's the feeling.
Oh, I don't want the
got.
mother to wake up yet because I think
I'm
not saying
she's
she gets-
disgusting and I love her
Oh my
and I
gosh.
hate her. I want to know how old Marjorie is. I want to know if Marjorie is
Yes.
her sister. Like,
Yes.
is this Marjorie just another boarder? In which case it would make sense. The mother wouldn't care. But is
Oh.
Marjorie her 14-year-old daughter?
Right.
Big difference.
Right.
And that's not clear here. But I think that the first 4 pages can go, and I think the last 2.5 pages are fantastic. I love the line where she's going on about the Avon lady, and then on page 5 she says, "Mother grabbed her hand, yanked it out, and slapped it. You know, you're gonna grow up to be just like your mother." And then the main character says, "And I wonder if someday I'd be like my mother too."
I wrote that one down,
Fantastic!
too.
Like that was
I
fantastic.
think we all did that. I marked that one too.
I loved
I
it.
think we all felt that.
I loved it. I loved it.
Yes.
Well, then you have near the bottom of page 5 too, you had Charlene and I did as we were told. That came out of left field too. Who's Charlene?
Yes.
That must be
Yeah.
her sister.
Right. Is
No,
my
it's another
No
boy.
idea, right?
5-year-old boarder. Okay.
Questions,
Right.
questions.
And
If
then-
I could put, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, even if you do ditch page 2, and I would actually be interested in, you know, if you're telling us about the mother and how she reacts to certain things, I would like to see how she moves through her day and, you know, for interesting pieces on how her mother reacts to it. But that could be part of what was already there. But if you look on the bottom of page 2, the last paragraph has 4 sentences starting with the word mother. And plus it's in the next paragraph, so that's just something that you want to look for when you're in your editing phase, but
Yeah.
not when you're first writing.
Yeah, I would look for the word kept, KEPT.
Oh,
I use
yes.
that a lot too.
Speaking of editing, if I could put on my grammatical hat, I found a lot of passive verbs. If you look at the bottom of page 1, if you choose to keep page 1, in our dining room sat a large oval wooden table. Next page, second paragraph down on page 2, a metal cot along the opposite wall was where we sat to watch television. It's just not strong enough. I would go with active verbs. We sat and watched television. We did that in this room. The dining room table was, or I don't know how you may reword it, but too many passive verbs make them active and meaningful.
Can you name a German Shepherd Lassie?
Excellent
it-
I
question.
think it's illegal.
I think it's illegal too. Yeah.
Not in
Maybe
Canada. Not in
Canada.
Canada.
Yeah, and then there's a misplaced modifier on page 3. So Marjorie would sit in front of her dresser staring into the mirror, brushing her long dark brown hair. The way it's worded, the mirror is brushing her hair.
Yeah.
I really
I like
those.
I like to find those.
Yes.
Yeah, and I had actually put, I thought the story really started on halfway down page 3, when they started talking about getting ready for church.
And I thought it started halfway down page
Uh-huh.
4.
Because I felt like that kind of moved into the scene with Damone or whatever his
Mhm.
name was. And yeah, okay. I mean,
But
if we're kind
this
of,
story has such potential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It really
yes.
does. It needs to be lifted off better.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the characters in it, and I think the rural atmosphere can be heightened more, because clearly no running water.
Right.
Bring that in, so there's an isolation effect there.
yes,
It's got everything that you'd need for a great story.
I
And the thing
agree.
about a memoir is you can really zero in on the interesting stuff
Mm.
and boil away the stuff you don't need.
That's right.
I mean, it's hard to do that with a novel because there's all kind of, you know, threads
But to
going on that
boil
are
away-
essential. But,
Oh, no.
you know, a lot of this, you know, you can struggle with a lot of material, and make cuts, and it's still coherent.
Mhm.
But to boil away the stuff you don't need, you have to get water from outside.
But
Oh,
I
geez.
know, I know.
It doesn't go away,
It's
does
well,
it?
she's obligated, she has to do it at least once.
That's right.
It has
doesn't
Every
go away.
show.
It's, and it
It doesn't
shouldn't,
go
it
away.
shouldn't go away.
It's a union.
Does anyone have anything else to add?
No, I just
Good
want to
job.
apologize because I know this is a memoir, so it's true, and I probably said some really bad
Yes,
things
we
about your
don't
mother,
mean
and I'm
to.
sorry. But if she did do that, it's really not nice. So, I'm sorry because it's your mother.
No, it was fun, I enjoyed it.
It has potential.
Yeah, it
We
really
did.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too. So, we good?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Barbara, thank you so much for submitting. We were really glad to read it, and we hope you got a lot out of what we had to say. And keep in touch. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Writers Infusion. Keep writing.
Yeah, memoirs are
Nice.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They still have to be an interesting story.
Yeah.